Two men in a room talking about something that can't be defined and having laptops in front of them. That's what we're going to do today. And who do you do that with? Do it with a great mind. That great mind is Doogie. Doogie, welcome.
Thank you very much.
Now you speak.
Yeah.
We are going to be talking about the most underrated player for every Premier League team. A difficult concept. We're going to do a double bill. We're going to do one to watch for next season as well, which is going to be is quite interesting as well because, yeah, we're not just going to kind of tread the normal path here. We'll go in different directions and hopefully you guys will enjoy that. If you are new to this podcast, then click all the buttons you need to click so that you don't miss any of the episodes. Obviously, World Cup year, lots of exciting things, hopefully in the pipeline. So get involved, get following, and also follow Doogie on YouTube, please. Do that immediately. There'll be a link in the description. Last time you were on, we did a similar thing with every club because you have that vast knowledge and you wanted to respect the alphabet. And I've sort of taken that phrase and ran with it. Now, we are going to do a similar thing in the sense of Arsenal will be first, but we're actually going odds and evens in the league table. This is before the Everton-Man United game. Quick thoughts on that game?
Oh, my goodness. Kind of crazy. Man United have a lot of individual players that you'd think could add a lot of excitement and dynamism to a team, but it's just so rigid in how they play at the moment. It's really undynamic. It's the lack of fluidity. They're kind of stuck to a structure playing against 10-men Everton. I thought they were really, really poor. Everton obviously didn't create many opportunities, but they didn't have to. And it was a brilliant winning goal as well from Dewsbury Hall, who I think is having a quietly excellent season. And Jai obviously so entertaining. Grealish has had his moments early on in this campaign as well. Everton feel like they're having a significantly better campaign than Man United.
They just got more in their locker room. I think it just highlighted the big weaknesses with Man United, which is, just getting away from having five in a line at the back. Like, I find it wild. Anyway, Arsenal. So I'm going first. I'm doing the evens for underrated player. It had to be Leandro Trossard for me. 15 games, 5 goals, 5 assists, so 10 goal involvements in total, obviously. Averaging 1.52 key passes per 90. I think the reason that I wanted to put him forward was that there are some players that I think will never be able to shake the sort of sub tag. And I think Trossard is going to be one of those ones where, say, Arsenal win the league this year. And as time goes on, you then go, let's compare the winning side from this league and this one. Trossard will be the one that misses out on that each time because for whatever reason, there's not that feeling of star power with him, but he's been quietly excellent for them. Here's a crazy stat for you. It's really random, actually. Trossard has more Premier League goals against the top 6, 19, than Ryan Giggs, who obviously played for a lot longer. But I think I wanted to talk about him because of what I've been thinking about with Arsenal recently, especially with the game against Spurs, was I thought often with that sort of wide player, you want someone who's got a lot of those kind of physical capabilities that get you really, really excited, like taking players one-on-one, being a direct threat, being having that pacing behind, whatever it may be. I think with him, what goes under the radar makes him underrated. So he's a great person to start with. Is he's more about the when. He's more about when to make that run. I think that first goal is a great example against Spurs because you've got someone like Martinelli who could have had on, and actually about 5 minutes before that, I was sort of saying there's no one up top, and I kind of got taught something by Arteta in the sense of if everyone just goes quick, then it's easier to defend that. Whereas if there's a sort of breathing to the game a little bit, that can be more effective, especially against a low block. And I thought Trossard, that's what he does that's quite hidden, is he knows when to go as a part of a sort of bigger collective. When you've got Calafiori at left back, those two seem to play quite well together. And if Calafiori comes in, Trossard goes out and vice versa. But doing it at the right time, I think that's something that you can't really see on FIFA.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? So in this age, people don't want to see it. But I think he's having a quietly brilliant season.
I'd agree with that as well. I mean, I was lucky enough to be doing Sky's socials at that game, so I was behind the goal. And for the first half, it was Trossard and Calafiori coming down my side, who I thought were, both of them, absolutely brilliant in that game. So dominant. Pedro Porro was again just really struggling for this season. I think he's been well off his absolute best, like a lot of Spurs players have. But Trossard feels like he's been really energised by the competition and the arrival of Madueke and Eze. And I think Martinelli was the same prior to injury as well. And I always remember, well, I'm acting as if it was years ago, but that game against Athletic Club quite early on in the season where they won 2-0, they scored two quite late goals. And Martinelli and Trossard. And at that moment, Arsenal were still kind of being doubted as, do they have the ability to kind of change games in an attacking sense outside of set pieces? And Trossard really performed in that game coming off the bench. And I think he's just been energised by the competition, as I say. And it's got to go down as one of those crucial signings in every squad, every title-winning squad. If they do go on, there's always that sort of £20 million, £25 million signing that kind of goes under the radar. You know, whether it was for Chelsea back in that Conte season, like someone like Marcus Alonso, or in more recent years like Fabian Delph at Man City, and kind of players.
It's quiet output.
Yeah. They'll never be talked about in 20 years as, do you remember Trossard?
Yeah.
But it'll be like someone pops up with 5, 6, 7 goals and assists per season, really crucial.
Yeah. So Trossard, well done. Next up is you. It's Chelsea. Second spot, doing all right, aren't they?
They are doing all right. Especially considering the injuries as well. I think not having Delap available for much of the campaign, obviously Cole Palmer, Colwill, Fofana, etc. I think most Chelsea fans, I don't think they've necessarily been overwhelmed by the performances, but the results have generally been pretty good so far this season. And I think Enzo Fernandez is now in underrated category for sure. I feel like the takes haven't really caught up in the same way that it took people quite a while to realise that Gabriel wasn't really rash and a kind of walking yellow card, which people talked about for maybe 6 months too long. I feel like now Enzo Fernandez hasn't quite got the respect for what's been a pretty good last 18 months in a Chelsea shirt. And it's worth remembering that although he signed for this huge, huge fee from Benfica, he'd only played for Benfica for half a season. So he made 29 appearances for them. And he'd not been playing for River Plate prior to that for that long. He just really exploded at that World Cup, scored that goal against Mexico, which was really crucial in that group stage, ends up being named World Cup Young Player of the Year, arrives at Chelsea. They finished 12th in his first season. They lose 7 of their first final 11 games of that campaign under Potter, then 6th and 4th in the last 2 campaigns. And it wasn't really until I think the start of last season and his numbers throughout last season and his effect on the game and his sort of burgeoning relationship with Moises Caicedo, and I think they're both kind of in that category of sort of best midfielders in the Premier League now, where I think he's really, really exploded. So since the start of last season, 10 goals and 8 assists in 47 games, and you compare that to his first 46 games for Chelsea, 3 goals and 4 assists. So he's almost sort of trebled his output in the last 47. And I feel like because he's not an electric player to watch in terms of he's not particularly quick, people underestimate his late runs into the box, his ability to mix it physically as well. His passes into the box this season are 5th. He's 5th for progressive passes. He can play from deep. He can kind of do a little bit of everything. Maybe nothing to a best in the Premier League ever standard. And we've been spoilt in the Premier League with attacking midfielders and central midfielders that can do a little bit of everything, whether it's Keane and Vieira or Gerrard or further forward Lampard and De Bruyne. I don't think he's ever going to get into that category. But I think he's now gone a long way to justifying that price tag. And it does feel like the strongest sort of unit of their team is that Caicedo-Fernandez partnership.
I think it's interesting because with him and Caicedo, the blossoming of those two, it's the whole team for me is getting to that maturation point where they're kind of like, okay, they've had a couple of years now. They know what they're doing. They're a bit better under pressure. They're also understanding games away at Burnley. You've got to be switched on here. Like whereas previously, I think that was quite a quiet statement, beating Burnley away, who are hard to break down, because those are the games that they would have drawn last year and the year before. And I also think with Enzo Fernandez, we're always kind of confused with who is he and where should he be in terms of a way that we naturally know. I think with the amount of rotations that Chelsea play with, he is allowed to be not a bit of everything, but a bit of like being able to drop deep and get on the ball and play those passes, but also arrive into the box at the right time. Both, again, are sort of hidden, ghostly talents that aren't going to be on the highlights reel, but are actually really, really important. And he's scoring goals now as well. He has got a goal in him. He was on my FPL bench last week. I just thought, he won't get a goal. And then he did get a goal.
He probably needs like a real statement game against an Arsenal or a Barcelona this week.
Has he got a statement game in him? Do you know what I mean?
I think he could do, because I feel like Caicedo's had Caicedo games even this season.
But is he? He's so all action, Caicedo, that I wonder if Enzo kind of, it allows him to be. I'm going to chuck a name out here. You'll hate this. It allows him to be the Leon Osman. And so I was thinking with like midfield threes, you kind of have, you might have your attacking midfielder, you'll have your defensive midfielder, and then you'll have your guy in between.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like Enzo Fernandez is kind of being the guy in between a little bit at the moment. And Caicedo's, because he's not even a guy who just sits there, he's so energetic that he's hiding in the shadows a touch.
He's definitely more eye-catching in the way he plays, Caicedo, isn't he?
Yeah.
But I think that's why I think Enzo fits this category.
Okay, love it. Yeah, absolutely. Man City in third in the league at the moment. I'm recording. Nico Gonzalez. Again, it's just quiet. This quiet stuff, guys. This quiet stuff. This is like this is the nuance that people are like, have you seen? You start to hear the whispers, and they get louder and louder until it's like finding a like new song or a new artist. You want to get these takes in now, guys, just so that when it goes, well, I said that, a couple of months ago, which I actually did this week with Eze, and then I felt sick doing it, but at the same time, I needed to tell people that I'd said it because I'm rarely right. Anyway, Nico Gonzalez is the latest whisper. Obviously, he scored a great goal against Liverpool recently, and I think everyone's saying the same kind of thing. That doesn't make it not true. And I was chatting to, so I often come here from doing the Premier League video, and I'll be there with Kai, and we were sort of chatting through a couple of these names. And we both sort of said and feel the same things, that he feels like the season before Rodri was the guy, and Fernandinho was still better. He's still better, but this guy's actually all right, and actually feels like he's starting to go somewhere. That's how it feels a little bit with Nico Gonzalez. Because looking at his numbers, they're kind of similar. And in terms of like defensive side of it, which might be an area where you might want to kind of keep an eye on him, like as he got those numbers, he's sort of equal to Rodri when it comes to tackles and interceptions. And they're not outrageously high, but I think the point of that is that he's great on the ball in terms of playing those simple, calm passes, that you're not missing Rodri from a kind of tempo setting calmness in the midfield, but also he's not getting exploited in transition too much either. Obviously, he can get miles better, but I feel like they've got something there with him, more so than I felt like last year, if I'm honest.
Definitely. And pressure's been on him as well, because I think it's difficult being a January signing. It's obviously difficult, looking quite similar in stature to Rodri as well.
And Pep said mini Rodri, didn't he? He said the words.
I sometimes think Pep's so enthusiastic that actually, calling Mateus Nunes one of the best players in Europe before he signed him, that's sometimes not that helpful.
Yeah.
And, Reinders had been a little bit up and down. I think Kovacic has been out as well. So there's been a lot of pressure on him, and I think he's responded pretty well.
Yes.
My next one was Aston Villa, and I think Villa fans absolutely love this guy, but I don't think he gets enough credit around the league, and that's Boubacar Kamara as well. And I think that's mainly down to injuries, because he's had 2 fairly significant injuries since being at Villa. He missed 62 games in the last 3 and a bit seasons, and he's never started more than 21 league games in a campaign, which, that's not insignificant amount of minutes, but he's never played those 35 games really nailing down a spot. He is always picked when he is available, but I think he's just struggled with his consistency of fitness, really. But when he is fit, he's been great. And especially this season, Villa had a terrible start. They've now risen up the league pretty significantly. Tielemans has been out as well, who was so brilliant last year as well. So he's had to take on more of a sort of progressive role with his passing. I think his long-range passing has always been very decent. I mean, this season, he's at 75% completion on his long balls, which is really pretty remarkable. Only Florentino Luis, randomly, of Burnley, Sander Berge and Sepp Vandenberg of Brentford can top that pass completion of players to have completed over 20 as well. He's also surprisingly good in the air, because I look at him and I'm not like, you're not wowed by his physicality, but he's won 78% of his aerial duels, and he was
quite tall, though, no?
Yeah, fairly tall. I don't know. He doesn't strike me as like, wow, what a unit.
Right.
But I think he's also just gone under the radar for a long time. I was almost surprised that Villa managed to get him, because he signed on a free transfer from Marseille, but he'd played, I think, about 4 years in Ligue 1 as a nailed-on starter there. And Marseille, at that particular moment, were doing a lot better than Aston Villa. He was signed under Steven Gerrard, which does go to show how long he's been there now as well. And I think so much of Villa's business, due to PSR, has been really up and down in the last few years. Like a lot of misses, and a lot of people will say their hands have been tied, and I totally agree with that. But Boubacar Kamara on a free, that's a great one. And I also think long term, I'm not sure whether he gets a move to a Champions League club every year because of that injury record as well. So it feels like that's a relationship that can continue for a long time to come.
Yeah, we so before the weekend, I was kind of looking at my picks, and I had Kamara, but then the league changed. So yeah, I agree. I think his ability to just punch the ball through is really great, and often intercepts in sort of areas which you kind of want these days with teams building up down the sides. You want someone to cut that centre midfielder to kind of go over to the right hand side or left hand side in those little channels and just kind of read it, and he does that really, really well. Good shout. Crystal Palace. Got a couple of options here. I might get Finn to shout out here, see which one he likes the most. So my 2 nominees for underrated are Tyrick Mitchell and Chris Richards. Tyrick Mitchell is averaging the most tackles won per 90 for Palace this season, right up there in the Premier League stats as well. Most dribblers tackled as well, most ball recoveries as well. And from an attacking point of view, he's never going to be outrageous, but he's definitely got better, I think. And Munoz is somewhat more of an attacking threat, I think, and maybe got a bit more of a goal in him than Tyrick Mitchell. But I think Tyrick Mitchell is underrated in the sense that I think I'd not given up on him, but I think you thought he was just your middling Premier League player, maybe he still is, but he's definitely getting better. And I think that the longer I do this, the more I don't want to kind of go give anyone any kind of ceiling. The other, which is one I probably would go for, Finn, let's see if you agree, is Finn's over there, by the way. There he is. You can't sit down if you want. Chris Richards. Chris Richards is 3rd in the Premier League for interceptions made with 18. Only Tyler Adams and Moises Caicedo are ahead of him. And that's important because both of those players are what? Midfielders. Chris Richards, his ability, and it was the Liverpool game that I really, really noticed it. And I think he has played defensive midfield in his career. Maybe that's why he's able to kind of read it. But his ability to jump from that back 3 and step in and just be brave enough to go, no, I'm going to go win it here. When I think generally you would see a lot of teams and players these days, because they're so coached, to go, no, I'll just stay here because I'm kind of safe here. That proactivity, that is something that Glasner talks about a lot, and being assertive. Those 2 centre-backs, there's a real advantage that can be had if you are that way. But if you're not, you're kind of safe too. So there is an element of risk in that. And I just think he's super, super smart. Which one out of those 2 is the most underrated? Not better.
Yeah.
Who's the most underrated?
My gut reaction would be to say Chris Richards, but I'm not going to because he kind of, his trajectory in the last year or 2 has been so visible. And people have been seeing it. I don't think he's as underrated anymore. I think people are like, oh, have you seen that Chris Richards? He's good now.
Yeah.
Tyrick Mitchell has been fantastic for years.
He's doing this, by the way.
He's
the passion
yes, Munoz is amazing. He's the best right back in Europe, possibly the world. But Tyrick Mitchell is also always in the top 10 for defensive actions and crosses. He's so reliable. How he hasn't had an England shout yet is beyond me.
I wonder if it's a surname Mitchell. I wonder if that's not hipster enough. Do you know what I mean?
And he's quiet. He's
He's
outgoing, but he's quiet.
You can tell
he's kind of super friendly, so people won't overlook him.
Yeah,
I
think he's just a steady. Mitchell. Yeah, he feels like your steady fullbacks, and you're putting a ceiling on him by saying the word steady. So yeah, let's go Mitchell.
I think he's impressed me more in the final third as well this year, because I feel like Eze last year, rightly so, because he's amazing at it, but would just kind of his first thing would be get a shooting position and fire off a shot, whereas Pino feels like a little bit more of a connector on that left-hand side as well. It feels a little bit more fluid.
That's a really good point. Well done, Tarek. From Palace to Brighton, the rivals.
Yeah,
thank you for that,
the rivals. Boo from Finn. Jan-Paul van Hecke. I feel like a couple of years ago, everyone would just focus on Lewis Dunk, and rightly so. Lewis Dunk was amazing, particularly under Roberto De Zerbi, foot over the ball, baiting the press, etc. But Jan-Paul van Hecke has, I think, superseded him quite clearly in the last couple of years. He's still only 25 years old, which surprised me as well.
I bet he's played a lot of games.
I think he has. And he came through, his first opportunity in England was with Blackburn, then at Brighton, and he's now got 8 caps for the Netherlands. He's part of an amazing crop of defensive talent that are Dutch. I feel like 20 years ago, maybe in the 90s as well, it was all about Dutch strikers with Kluivert and Bergkamp and then Van Persie and Van Nistelrooy, etc. The Dutch defensive talent at the moment, whether it's Timber, Van der Ven, Botman, Hatto, De Ligt, Bukema from Napoli as well, Van Dijk, of course, Geertruida, who's really pulling up trees at Sunderland as well. Maybe he'll get the mention in due course. But Van Hecker, I think, has been amazing for a long time now. He's played every minute so far this season.
Played over 200 games now.
Yeah, really impressive stuff. And
is with him, is it, because I was looking at the sort of, I don't know if it was passes completed or it's one or the other, but him and Dunk were right up there.
Mm-hmm.
Is that still the sort of the De Zerbi way, still kind of like living in them? Like, so like if you take him out and put him in a slightly different system, I don't think we don't really know what that is yet in terms of like his ceiling as a player. I'd like to see him like in a different setup, because that is stat padding a touch.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean?
I know what you mean for sure. Although I don't think Herzl is such a possession disciple as De Zerbi necessarily, but yeah, there's definitely some sort of carry on from those days for sure. I mean, on that point, only Szoboszlai and Elliot Anderson have completed more progressive passes. Only Anderson, again, what a player Elliot Anderson is, and Van Dijk.
Literally just had a video on him. Like, obsessed with him.
Oh, he's amazing.
He's amazing.
Completed more carries into the final third. Really impressive from Van Hecker. And this was after a summer in which they signed 2 centre-backs, including Boscaglia, who I thought was going to be amazing. Hasn't really had a look in yet. And I think he's just kind of been motivated by the competition and goes from strength to strength. And no one has really noticed that Brighton are 6th. And it's at that stage of the season where there's so few points between, and particularly this year, it feels like there's a lot of middling.
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of very good teams, but very few outstanding teams in the Premier League this year, aside from Arsenal, I would say.
Or utterly dominant when it comes to results.
Yes,
right?
exactly.
Yeah, because it would have annoyed me. Complete passes 7.65. In third place he is. Lewis Dunk with 8.16 and Virgil van Dijk 8.43.
Yeah, but we talk about, what his future holds, and Brighton fans will probably find this really annoying. But I suggested him for Chelsea in the summer and kept on banging that drum. And Chelsea, Brighton, it's a well-trodden path. Maybe it was a little bit lazy of me, but I do think he's the centre-back that Chelsea should be targeting for me. He's 25 now, but he's got Premier League experience and feels like he would elevate that side. I also wonder if someone like Liverpool might look at him in the next couple of years, if Konate's going to leave, if Gomez isn't trusted by Slot, if Van Dijk is now, 34, etc. So I think there could be a top 6 move at some stage, but for now, Brighton fans will just be delighted with him.
Okay. Because it's funny that the Brighton-Chelsea path was like, that doesn't work. Well, it does work, actually. Cucurella's done really well. And Caicedo's done really well. Potterless. Sunderland. I mean, I'm gonna speak for a second, but I actually kind of want to have your take on it as much as anything when it comes to Sunderland. I've gone for Daniel Ballard. The reason I've gone for Daniel Ballard is because I just think everyone was sort of not laughing at him, but just felt quite clear that he wasn't capable. And I think with some of the parts around him helping him, it's allowing him to do what he's great at, which is winning his aerial duels. He's got the most in the Premier League among centre-backs this season in terms of winning them, 5.6. And I can never say his name, Mukiele?
Mm-hmm.
I did it. Having him for that bit of pace, who's another kind of, he's probably the hipster shout.
Mm-hmm.
And Leah's actually spoke about him a while back, right at the start of the season. He's been fantastic for them. Renildo, I've said that right. He's on the left-hand side, so dealing with Ballard having to go out and sort of sort things out as well. And I guess Sunderland haven't really had that much possession either, so they're kind of there and steady, and it works for him. So I don't know what his ceiling is either, but I just think, there was a lot of Ballard bashing, and I think he's, especially with the tactical meta of set pieces, long throws, all that stuff. He's a really, really important part for Sunderland, in my opinion.
Absolutely, and he spent so much of last season injured as well that it was really Mepham in 2009, and then we didn't sign Mepham permanently, and we signed so many centre-backs that it did feel like Ballard probably wouldn't get a look in. And so many of our sort of championship stalwarts, whether it was Mundell on the left-hand side or Dan Neil or Luke O'Nien, etc., it's only really Try Hume and Isidore up front and Ballard that have played sort of serious minutes. He hasn't played as many minutes as someone like Try Hume, but I have been impressed by Hume's adaptation, but I just know that Try Hume is going to get sent off at some stage in the next 3 to 4 games. He is really really clattering people on a regular basis, potentially in the derby. Early shout there. Okay. But Dan Ballard has been amazing.
You just manifested.
I know.
Your own team.
Out of fear.
Okay.
But yeah, he's been amazing. I think Siddiqui as well, alongside Xhaka. So much focus has gone on Xhaka and Siddiqui, given his relative lack of experience in a top 5 league, etc. Although he was a regular for Union Saint-Gilloise, I think he's been really, really impressive.
Yeah, absolutely. Over to you, Bournemouth. I went with Marcos Senesi. In slightly different to a lot of the players I'm suggesting, he's 28. He came from Feyenoord. He helped Feyenoord reach the Conference League final in the first year of the Conference League, where
They then lost to Jose Mourinho's Roma. That feels like a long time ago now. But he's played 2 full seasons. He had played 2 full seasons. Then actually starts last season as the regular. He starts 11 of their first 13 games. He then does his hamstring. Dean Howson comes into the side. Dean Howson and Zabani take off. Both of them end up joining Real Madrid, PSG, etc. And he was out until March. But people had kind of forgotten about him this summer. I feel like, myself included, with so much change in defence, it felt like almost impossible for them to go again. But he's played all but 12 minutes of this campaign. Only Grealish, Hartman, Kudus and Minter provided more than his 3 assists. He has got quite lucky on a couple of occasions. There was that handball on the opening day of the season against Liverpool, where he definitely should have been sent off. It was a one-on-one and Ekitike was through. And there was another quite controversial moment as well. I think it was a penalty that went his way effectively. He's been involved in 2 decisions that the VAR have come out and had to apologise for. So he's maybe got slightly lucky.
Yeah.
But in terms of a left-footed centre-back, pumping the ball through the lines, and a few of their players from last season haven't necessarily hit the same heights as this year. I think Evan Nilsson struggled. Justin Kluivert's been really off compared to his usual levels. So for Senesi to come in on the back of missing 6 months of last season and look so comfortable, he's created only 1 fewer chance than someone like Tajani Reinders. He's second for clearances in the Premier League behind Van Dijk, which probably suggests how much pressure Liverpool have been under as well. Third for interceptions. He just looks like a really complete all-round centre-back. And whilst, in these team of the seasons discussions, he's never going to get there because you're probably going to give it to a pretty much entire Arsenal back line.
Yeah.
If you were going to go for the hipster choices of team of the season so far, I think Senesi would be a very good candidate.
Good shout for being underrated as well, because he's never going to be as rated as high as Howson. And because he's older as well, no one's going to really start to tout him out at other places as well. So he'll probably kind of stay there for quite some time. And I think it's worth saying with Semenyo's, not rise or, new peak, part of that is him getting the ball. And Senesi's a big part of that. Different to Howson. Howson likes to kind of dribble with it for a bit and then might play that pass. Whereas Senesi just punches it through or does that little chip to Semenyo as well. So he's getting him, the reps that allows him to create as well. So yeah, he's a great show. Right, this is hard. I asked around for this next one. Tottenham.
Wow.
So I asked Flav and Flav said I don't know, man. And there was moments where, like a voice note, you go, is he finished or is he just thinking? Like there was these long pauses where he's going, no, honestly, I'm struggling. I've got 2 here. Bergvall and Palhinha. I think I'm going to go for Palhinha. Wait. People are getting annoyed about Palhinha, right? Most tackles in the league, right? And that's what he is.
You know what you're signing.
Right? So in terms of what you would like him to be, I think it's actually there's a broader issue there that, and this is why Bergvall kind of comes into it a little bit for me, is Thomas Frank wants that double pivot there, right? And in certain games it works, but there seems like no desire to play the ball through that central area. And so that means that Palhinha or Bentancur or, say you have to go, look, Bentancur, you need to be good enough to get on the ball there, be press-proof, turn and play the ball forward. If he's not good enough to do that, get someone who's great at carrying the ball, like Bergvall, and give him that opportunity. I think Thomas Frank has been careful up until this point. And so now it'll be interesting to see how and what and who he changes. And I think that midfield too, you've got 2 6.5 guys on the ball. But the thing with Palhinha is, and in the second pod, we're going to talk about someone that could be part of a double pivot in 2026 for Spurs. I could see it kind of working and being enjoyable. But you want to lean on Palhinha's skills, which is winning the ball. So I don't think he's done an outrageous amount wrong, Palhinha, away from who he is and what he is. And therefore, there's now this idea that he's not good enough. I actually think the makeup of that midfield too, that's the problem here. Yeah. That's my view.
Of the 2, I'd definitely be more disappointed with Bentancur so far this season, because I do think he's got more in his locker in terms of his on the ball, cutting through the lines, etc. And he was a really useful player in his first. Well, he's had great spells at Spurs, but not probably.
And Spurs are their best under Postecoglou. He's a single pivot and he's given the ball.
Yeah.
And he's able to kind of do that. But I think he's just been, because I've seen good performances from Bentancur as well I watched the Leeds game away, watched the Man City game away on the tactical camp. So you can kind of see what everyone's doing. And he does sniff out things a lot of the time. So actually, my view on him had gone up a little bit. I think the problem feels a bit more profile-y, to the formation. I think you're seeing a lot of double pivots now. If you're having a double pivot, Elliot Anderson's a good example. If you've got Sangare, who's that conservative guy, you want to have another guy who's, who can go and do bits and get on the ball for you as well. And I feel like that's where they're missing something out of those two right now.
Yeah, I think if I was doing underrated for Spurs, I'd probably consider Jed Spence, but then is he underrated? Yeah. I think he has got a lot of praise, rightly so, over the last year. I think Destiny Udogie could be a really good left back, but he's not there just yet. That's kind of my shout for maybe 18 months' time.
Yeah.
But Spurs, they were abject at the weekend. And for their two worst performances of the season to come in the derby games, for their home form to be so bad, I really want Thomas Frank to be given lots of time. And actually, if you want to hear more about Thomas Frank's tactics, go check out Inside the Mind, where James presented with Thomas Frank, produced by myself and my colleague Freddie. It was a Sky Allcott production, my favourite type of production. And he was very good on that. But unfortunately, results have taken a turn since it's gone out. So go check that
out. Man United.
Now,
tough.
This is really difficult because they've got some decent players, obviously, but are they underrated? I wouldn't probably say so. I think Mbeumo's not underrated. Bruno Fernandes is not underrated. I think Bruno Fernandes is over-criticised, but I don't think there's many people in the Premier League that don't think he's a good player.
Yeah.
And potentially used in the wrong position. I considered Amad Diallo, but I don't know whether he is underrated, particularly as a right wing back. Cunha, again, I think most people acknowledge that he's played pretty well so far this season without the kind of numbers. Casemiro's probably had an underrated season so far.
Do you know what, again, this is one that sort of switched for me. Now, I was thinking, who plays and you get points? And the person who was quite far in front was Luke Shaw.
Really?
Which I was surprised by. But I think that's more like there's not many other left-sided centre-backs. Well, obviously, Martinez is on his way back, as opposed to Luke Shaw being, outstanding.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's quite a lot of work to do with that Shaw-Dorgu relationship for sure. It doesn't feel like someone's taking enough initiative at points when the ball's on their left-hand side. I eventually went for Matthias de Ligt. I'm not particularly overwhelmed by it, just because I think when he has played in that central centre-back role, his general kind of meat and potato defending, let's say, head the ball, win the tackle, etc., has generally been pretty good. What I think he struggles with is often balls over the top in that wider role. He sometimes gets slightly lost under the ball. I think he's probably been United's best defender so far this season. I don't think there's been that many United players that can be that proud of their performances so far this season across the entire year. But Matthias de Ligt hasn't let anyone down. Again, underrated given he's cost vast amount of money to two different clubs and then is seen as a bit of a coup for Man United. I'm not sure whether he's the right fit.
I put it out on Twitter that some people were saying Mount. A lot of people did say Matthias de Ligt, to be fair. A couple of people said Luke Shaw. And again, I was sort of looking at the sort of points per game thing. And I don't know if it's underrated, not if that's the right word, maybe it's too early, but Lamans was one that was quite up there as well. But I
also think Lamans had to deal with, I think it was before he'd even made his debut, Paul Scholes, whose opinion carries a lot of weight, said that, this guy is not going to be good enough, he's joined from the Belgian league, which I just think is such one of those really outdated opinions that, as if players can't be good that have come out of Portugal or Belgium or the Netherlands or whatever. It just didn't make a lot of sense. So I
bet if you think about it, let me know in the comments, who is a player that's come from the Belgian league that's done really, really well?
Well, did Catalara when he went to Atalanta, or Doku wasn't, in France long before?
I was in Lille, right?
He was in Lille, but I didn't like that as a statement from Scholes.
Yeah. Okay. Liverpool, again, tricky. This is I think what's great about this underrated thing is that it's, depending on how the team's doing. And I think that's why it's good to kind of go, what's the truth with these guys? Kind of, and it almost sounds boring to go, well, wait a second. But don't just kind of go black or white. This is the way it is. But yeah, with Liverpool obviously struggling massively this season, I've gone for Szoboszlai, kind of because of slim pickings there, if I'm honest. Because I'm just like Wirtz. You go, yeah, but the money, and everywhere else, Ekatike is he underrated? Probably not right now. I think everyone knows he's good, but overall, it's not working at all. I nearly thought about having Gravenberch in there, but he's getting pelters. So I think maybe that's something I needed to hold off on. But I still think some people going Gravenberch's not sick. I'm not sure I totally agree with that. I think he proved that he can do that. And did do that last year. But I think the guy he's been great under the pressure of the whole situation has been Szoboszlai. and filling in that right back position as well. Shows that he's got that in his locker, and I think they've kind of missed him in other areas when he's then gone and played there. So in terms of being underrated, it's one that I feel like he was truly underrated last year when maybe halfway through the season and people were starting to get it there. So it's probably 6 months late in terms of saying
but on the basis of this season, I agree.
But I don't know who else I could put forward.
Last year it was probably Gakpo as well, but this year I don't think he's been quite at his best. Alexis McAllister probably hasn't got enough criticism. I don't think he's been great at all this season at all. But
who's been great?
Well, exactly.
No one's been great.
Exactly. It's a complicated situation. It makes me feel quite uncomfortable even criticising too many Liverpool players. It just does feel like a bit of a write-off season. Get Champions League football and kind of go again.
Yeah.
Whether that's, a lot of rival fans will be like, oh, well, they spent £400 million, but obviously the extenuating circumstances have to come into it.
Yeah. And just the change of a team, right? Like just from one idea to another idea, there is a massive gap. There has to be a gap in between. And then you add in everything else, and that's made life a lot harder. And the evolution of players moving on, players getting older, all those things.
You guys called it. I remember in the summer we did a transfer show at Sky, and you and Clive were on, and you both backed Arsenal.
Yeah. Yeah, it's looking all right for now. We'll see. Well, I'm trying to lie. Because I don't know if you have this, but with the predictions one, it's in my mind for a while.
Yeah.
Because you're going to get some people going to go, how could you, regardless, right?
Yeah,
so you just need to be happy with what you're saying. And I remember kept chatting because I talk to Kai about football every day. I was just like, I can't not go with Arsenal. Like my gut is saying Arsenal. You just all go with Arsenal.
Mine was Liverpool.
You go, yeah, but they spent so much money. And like, but yeah, anyway, I'll get it wrong next time.
Brentford. Again, I think Damsgaard's got a lot of praise over the last 18 months. I think Igor Thiago's got a lot of praise this season, deservedly so. What an amazing campaign coming back from injury. Jordan Henderson, obviously, I think has got a lot of praise. Back in the England squad, looks like a pretty, maybe not nailed on, but pretty close nailed on member of the World Cup squad. I think Kevin Schade is probably my pick. Still only 23 years old. Again, a bit like Nico Gonzalez signs in January. That's quite difficult. His first full season, he spends the vast majority of that out injured. He missed 34 games that year. Last year's his first full season. 11 goals, 2 assists. And everyone's talking about Wissa. Everyone's talking about Mbeumo.
Yeah,
but
great point.
11 goals is pretty decent. That was as many league goals as Antoine Semenyo. And this season, with those players having left the club, he's become much more key as well. He started 11 of 12 games. He's one of 8 Brentford players that have started at least 8 league games. There's them and Palace have really benefited from having a very solid, settled starting 11, which you can't say for every club as well. And Igor Thiago is the only player to be directly involved in more than his 4 league goals. I think this guy is probably never going to get to a sort of 15, 20 goal per season player, but he will have games that take your breath away because of his physical capabilities. Like he's an amazing aerial duel winner, which is so random, but there's only 2 non-defenders that have won more aerial duels than him this season, which are Beto and Igor Thiago. And Beto obviously doesn't offer that much outside of winning balls in the air. Tieno Barry is actually incredibly good at that. And actually after last night's game, I bet he's above it as well. He's not a high volume shooter, Kevin Schade, but he's so explosive. He's so athletic. And for example, his game against Liverpool where they won, he was absolutely sensational in that. So he will have games that kind of take your breath away.
Yeah. Henderson, when you spoke about him, it's one where it's different kind of underrated, where like people feel more strongly about Henderson either way, as in like, I like you because you're a leader, or hang on, he's slow. Whereas Schade, is a good shout because I don't think people don't talk about him much. For someone who's like a key attacker for a Premier League team, people don't really talk about him at all.
Brentford have been flying this season as well. I know.
Yeah, never go against Brentford. Somehow just a bit smarter than everyone else. Next up is me, and it is, where is it? James Garner.
Nice.
For Everton.
He was great last night.
So good. I thought that him and Dewsbury Hall against Man United last night was superb, and I think that's what I'm wanting from my midfielders these days. I think that aside from obviously Henderson, and it works in that team, but I think you've got to have even as a sort of combative midfielder, you've got to have a little bit of everything these days. And then in that game, look, Man United were disappointing, but still got 10 men for a really long time. So you need players to become 2 players. And more so Dewsbury Hall in terms of getting forward. But Garner is so comfortable on the ball. And I think he massively goes under the radar. He's been good for a good few seasons now. Can play right back as well, really, really comfortably. But he's making that midfield position his own. And it's one where, like, you look at Man United in that squad, obviously he left there. He would have been, they could really used someone like James Garner. And that's not indictments. I guess it's the pressures of Man United. But the fact that you couldn't kind of bring him, like if you had him in Kobbie Mainoo, that feels like quite a good.
You just never know whether he'd turn into James Garner of 2025 if he's playing 10, 15 games a season for a couple of years.
Yeah.
It's always the difficulty, isn't it?
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's, it's funny, I said about Dewsbury Hall actually, is that I think at Chelsea he sort of not got swallowed up, but like his sort of value and self-esteem was maybe devalued at Chelsea.
Well, he's just the Conference League man. And it's just,
exactly. Whereas at Everton he's like important and everyone wants him to go and do what he wants and go where he wants and affect the game. And I think James Garner, it's a similar thing. You're right. And just quietly goes about his business, really good on the ball. I like him a lot. I think he quietly goes about his business brilliantly. So well done, James. You're up.
Newcastle. I don't know whether this guy's underrated because I think he has got a lot of credit over the last 12 months, but it was maybe a little bit delayed in Jacob Murphy. I think Fabian Schär's also a shout. I'm not sure whether he's really ever got the credit he deserves kind of for his career at Newcastle. I think he's been very solid for a long time. But Jacob Murphy, 20 league goal contributions last year. Amazing. One every 119 minutes. He got 10 league goal contributions the year before, and he was much more of a bit part player. One every 119 minutes as well. Really, really consistent for a long time. This year, he ranks 9th for league minutes in this Newcastle squad. Obviously, they've got Barnes and Gordon to kind of choose between as well. But only Bruno Guimaraes and Voltsparda have been directly involved in more goals. And he's underrated in terms of his creativity. And it's not the kind of eye-catching creativity that will necessarily, make up loads of highlights reels and you'll see compilations on TikTok. It's not those really cute through balls that everyone loves and I love. It's those kind of whipped crosses, but he's so good at them that it works really effectively. Only Doku and Grealish can top his expected assists per 90 ratio in the entire Premier League this year, which is pretty impressive. He's also 8th in the Premier League for shots. He's 8th in the Premier League for shots on target. He's going for it. And given the fact that he's 9th at Newcastle for league minutes, to be in the top 12 or so for all these metrics in the Premier League, he's kind of motivated by the kind of will to have to compete with these players now.
I guess England's so stacked that it's hard for him to get anywhere near it, really. And he'd have to have like 2 goals, 3 assists. Like he has to go have crazy numbers again. Yeah. And Newcastle aren't really in that place at the moment, it feels like.
But a great servant for a decent Premier League outfit that you'd expect to fly up the table now. I think their Champions League form shows that they're a much better side than their league form has suggested so far. I think Newcastle will probably be top 6, 7 by the end of the campaign.
Yes, the away form, isn't it? It's weird. They were awful against Brentford. But I don't know if that is a Brentford at home thing. Fulham. I've gone for Harry Wilson.
Techie,
I think he kind of... I say this a lot, but it probably doesn't make too much sense. I feel like he knows he's an adult now. And he's just like scoring goals. He's not actually on free kicks, I was told.
Really?
Yeah, which I find bizarre. But he's...
When I think of Harry Wilson, that's the first thing you think.
Yeah. But scoring goals, affecting the game in a much better way. I think his confidence is sky high without going too far. That's why I think feels like there's a maturity about what he's doing, but he's still willing to try things. He had a finish on the weekend that didn't actually go in, but it sort of took one touch, and then I think everyone would have thought he would go there, but he went for the other corner. He was really unlucky in that moment. But yeah, I just think he's really, really impressive, and someone who I felt was generally quite lightweight, and I thought that meant that he was only going to be so good and he'd score the odd spectacular goal, and so he's useful. I think he's miles better than that. And I think people don't talk about him too much, really. People might have chucked out Josh King, but I think people that listen to this will be aware of him and how neat he is. But I think Harry Wilson's one of those top guys now, maybe taken over from Iwobi a little bit in terms of the guy that I look at when I'm watching Fulham. So I'm going for Harry Wilson.
Mm-hmm.
Nottingham Forest.
I like it. Nottingham Forest. I went with Nico Williams. I think a lot of their stalwarts from last season have kind of struggled this year. I don't think Milenkovic has been quite at the same level. Matt Sells, after a freakish year last year, has kind of regressed to his mean, which is still a very good goalkeeper. Don't think Morgan Gibbs-White has necessarily pulled up any trees. But I think Nico Williams has been solid once again. He's now in his 4th year at Forest, which has flown by. He was part of that crazy summer of 2022 where they signed 22 players, and there's like players like Remo Freuler and Renan Lodi and Jesse Lingard on a free, so many misses. But Nico Williams has been really solid for a long time. He's very reliable in terms of his injury record. He can play on both sides really effectively. His minutes are almost split almost identically between left back and right back. And when Olarena's out injured, he can play on the right-hand side. Otherwise, he's going to be used on the left. And he's one of 4 Forest players to play every minute so far this season. Only João Palhinha has made more tackles than him in the Premier League. He's third amongst Premier League defenders for blocks behind Mitchell and Kyle Walker. And I think he's just a very, very solid defender. Again, it doesn't necessarily feel like a player that's going to go too much beyond Forest in terms of a move to a big club. But he's been tied down in the summer to a new deal till 2029. I think he's at a good place in Forest. I don't think they're going to be relegated. I think they'll probably finish comfortably in mid-table this year and for a few years to come as well because they've got that financial backing. So, yeah, I think things are looking good for Nico Williams.
I think he's a little bit hard done by as well, the fact that he is playing on that left-hand side, because he doesn't naturally, because he's right-footed, he's doing what he has to do in terms of like cutting that right foot and put that cross in. He's got a great cross on him. But it's not as natural as it would be if he was on the right-hand side. So I actually think there's a better fullback there if you can give him those minutes at right back. But the fact that he's going through this and playing and still being valuable, I think speaks volumes to probably quite a pretty smart footballer.
Team player.
Team player. West Ham. Okay. Not because he's a personal friend. He's not a personal friend, but we've spoke to him a couple of times. Callum Wilson. Underrated because the guy scores goals when he doesn't get many opportunities. Like he's getting 69.2% of his shots on target, which is amazing. He's like, I think his XG is 2.6. He's on 4 goals. Just go and watch the goals against Bournemouth. Like he's just a proper striker. And I think there will never be any kind of erosion of his confidence in scoring goals. And that is, for a team that is currently down the bottom, worried, that is absolute gold. Like we said, it might have been when we did the pod last time, I was thinking him for Leeds. And as some of the strikers that Leeds are looking at, they're looking for those kind of, those out-and-out goal scorers. And, okay, he's older. And this is amazing, right? He became the first player in Premier League history, scored twice in the first half without completing a single pass.
Wow.
But that's not what he's there for.
No. Amazing.
And to have that kind of, to not complete a pass and therefore not have many touches, and to have that deft finish, the second one in particular, that is just like, you can't teach that, I don't think. And so I think he's underrated.
They've needed it for so long as well, haven't they? I mean, the list of strikers that have failed at West Ham, whether for injuries or just bad fits or the wrong manager at the time, it's pretty endless. What I like about Callum Wilson, and this is not really to do with this football, but he just looks like he's having a great time. I think he's just happy to have one final opportunity at a Premier League club.
So he said he wants 100 goals. Right. So that's why he wanted a Premier League move.
Yeah.
I think he was 7 away, so he's only a few away now. And he wants to get in the 100 club in the Premier League. And look, I'd be amazed if he doesn't get it done. You hope he does get it done. You're right. But but I think that a lot of being a good striker is that attitude. And being able to kind of keep calm when you miss a chance. And he doesn't miss that many chances. If he can stay fit, and this is the thing I think why he's underrated is people throw him in the bin because of the fitness and because he's a little bit older. He scores goals.
He also hasn't spent all his career in the Premier League. So to get to 100 goals for, I mean, a vast majority of those for Bournemouth when they were kind of establishing themselves in the Premier League as well. Decent for Newcastle at various points as well prior to injury. Yeah, what a career. And I always enjoyed wherever I watched the clips of him in that Mikel Antonio podcast as well. He seems like a really good character. He's very charismatic.
Yeah, no, he is a cracking guy. And he just loves talking about being a striker. He's not really bothered about kind of anything else. I think he's massively underrated and could be utterly crucial for West Ham this year as they're trying to stay up. Who's next? Where are we? Leeds.
Yes, Leeds. I think that Leeds have been quite unlucky in the Premier League this year compared to Sunderland. Have obviously been, no disrespect to my own team, but I think we've been quite fortunate to be where we are. I think Burnley are probably worse than they've shown in terms of the table, but actually I think Leeds are not a terrible side. I think they've had real struggles in terms of scoring goals, which is obviously very clear, but they're actually the 9th best side in the league, and this was prior to Everton, Man United, so it might change slightly by expected points as well. And only Crystal Palace have underperformed their XG by more than Leeds. So if someone, Metcher Metcher's the guy I'm banking on because I just don't think it's going to be Calvert-Lewin. I'm not sure it's going to be Okafor either. Can find a run of form, I think they could climb the table and be safe by the end of the season, which does mean one of the big boys, 2 of the big boys potentially, or the established sides, if Sunderland are going to stay up as well, it could be a real thrilling end to the season. But in terms of their underrated player, I think it's Sean Longstaff. Because I think Anton Stack, when Leeds signed him, who I think has also been brilliant, everyone went, wow. Particularly anyone that had been watching the Bundesliga for the last few years. You know, he was wanted by a number of top clubs, can play in a variety of different positions, felt like a real coup for Leeds, and a very good price on that as well. But Sean Longstaff, his actual final 18 months at Newcastle, I think went under the radar as well. I think he was very good, considering also he had been, laughingstock's a bit strong, but he'd been a figure of fun at points during his time at Newcastle. So to finish on that note, at your boyhood club, go to Leeds, 1 goal and 2 assists. That's the joint most at Leeds. And he's first for chances created at Leeds with 20, which is joint 9th in the Premier League, level with Alex Iwobi and Enzo Fernandez. And he also leads Leeds. He's top of Leeds charts for defensive actions and blocks as well. So he's kind of doing a little bit of everything. And I think he can be pretty proud of his performances so far for a side that I think have been a bit unlucky.
Okay. A couple of other shouts. Joe Rodon was going to be the other shout. I think he's like someone, again, people like, is he Premier League or not? I think he's kind of proven that he is. It's close with Leeds. It's one, but is Farke going to survive or not? I don't know. But yeah, like you say, they're not doing that. It's not that bad.
Even at the weekend,
you've got to keep the belief there.
Equaliser against Villa, and it just taps Calvert-Lewin's hand, and you're just like, oh, they can't get anything going. And
the free kick's unreal.
Yeah.
Like, it's unbelievable technique. Burnley. I've got a couple here. I saw you tweeted about Hartman, so feel free to talk about him if you'd like to. I'm going to go with Chalner's been impressive. Obviously had that amazing goal against Leeds. I'm going to go for Zion Fleming, though, which I know is you're not sure, which is fine. But I think that the thing I want to give him in terms of flowers is working his nuts off, and so from the stats, it's not really going to offer too much. He's got 3 goals so far this season. 2 came in the win against Wolves, and that's what's going to keep Burnley up, is winning those big games against teams around you. But I think for how Burnley are going to kind of set up, and the players that have got to get in behind a guy who's just going to battle, I actually think he's technically better than kind of people might realise. And I think for Millwall, he was a bit more of a kind of a techie player, let's say. But that sort of second striker, even though he's playing up on his own, it kind of makes sense to me with Burnley, because you can have those runners beyond him once he does it. But the amount of times he works back and does defensive work, it's one that I'm not sure an out Callum Wilson striker would do that same thing. So I think in terms of his value to a team that's going to be down there and knows they're going to be down there, but he's also got a bit of quality in terms of a set piece or being able to, finish. I just think he might be a bit under the radar. Burnley fans, let me know if I'm talking absolute rubbish, because I think there's probably a lot of moments where he's an isolated figure up there, but he's battling away, and I just didn't expect to see that with him. But yeah, Chalner's a fun player as well.
Nice. Yeah, I think Cullen's impressed me as well. I think Ugochukwu as well, Florentino Luis. I think there's a few candidates for Burnley. I don't mean to be disparaging about them. I just think it's a competitive Premier League this year, and I do think they'll eventually go down. But there's some players
they're fighting. I like the fight. They kind of understand what they are right now. And then in 20th spot, and so last today, Wolves, tough. I was like, it's so hard to even pick one for Wolves at the moment. I actually asked Dave Azzopardi, who's does a Wolves channel, and asked him about who's the most underrated player. He sort of said, well, we had a one to watch. I asked for a one to watch and an underrated player. And I think he did. Krejci, he said, was probably like the underrated player who I don't want to say, but we'll be talking about him a little bit later on. But it's hard for Wolves.
Yeah, I find it pretty difficult, especially because they're better players. Strand Larson, João Gomez, Andre have not been at their best so far this season. I actually went with Hugo Bueno, the left wing back as well. He actually joined Wolves' academy in 2019, aged just 17, but he didn't make his debut until 2022. He played 2 years of kind of a little bit of semi-regular football at Wolves, then gets loaned to Farnold last season, comes back this year, he now ranks 5th for league minutes. And he's been a running threat for sure. There's only Amad Diallo, Gudmundsson from Leeds, and Spence who've completed more progressive carries this season amongst Premier League fullbacks as well. And he's first in Europe for crosses completed, which impressed me a lot.
Really? Yeah. Had the most crosses into the penalty area in the Premier League this season as well.
First in Europe as well. And 7th for passes into the box in the entirety of Europe as well. So I feel like, a really difficult season for them. I think they're better than 2 points for sure. I think they're better than, say, a Southampton last year. But it looks very, very difficult for them to stay up, and so many of their players, it doesn't feel like a quite at Premier League level, particularly across their back line, I would say.
Yeah, and on that chirpy note, go check out Doogie's YouTube channel. Links in the descriptions. Follow this podcast and let us know which names we forgot to mention in this podcast. And make sure you check out the one to watch in 2026, which we're about to record in just a second and be out later this week. Cheers.